Welcome, Mucai. It's a pleasure to have you back with me in these conversations that I'm having, and I really appreciate the fact that you giving me this time, because I think it's very important, mainly now that we're getting on the second phase. At least in Italy, we're approaching the second phase, and around here they're talking a lot about Africa and difficulties there. So to have a first-hand information from Kenya, that's a very precious thing to me. So thank you for that. Thank you for being with me. And let's start by updating about the situation. What's going on there? What is happening in reality there in Kenya? How things are evolving, and how are things there? At this point.
Okay. Thanks, David. Always good to see you again. And chat and spur some thinking as well. I think that's what's interesting, and I've been watching the other videos, which are great, and making us think. And I think as always in life, we've got to be able to think through these situations and then take also individual choices based on thinking, and not just get caught into the system. So how's it going? I can start with Kenya, where I live now in Nairobi, and we currently have we've had about 411 cases of confirmed cases of COVID, is what we should say. 21 deaths so far across the country. Now, of course, those numbers are a little bit, you have to take, what you need to consider when you think about those numbers is how many people have we tested? And I think we're just approaching 10,000 people we've tested. So we haven't really tested that many people. Whether there is more COVID out there is an issue, is a question mark we need to ask. One of the interesting things about it in Africa is that 70% of those people are asymptomatic. Because what happened is, the way the testing worked at the beginning was that whoever came in, we had just around mid-March, they closed the airports around the 20th or so, I think, so about from the 15th, somewhere around there. Whoever came in had to go into quarantine. And they had to spend 14 days in quarantine. And then they tested those guys and checked, who, so that was the bulk of the people who've been found to be positive. And a lot of them don't actually have symptoms. Now, then after that, there were a couple of other people who've come in and they've done some contact tracing. So they figured out, where did you go to, who's your family, and so on. And they tested a couple of people around that. And that's where they're finding a few more cases. So in the sense of, there was a fear that by now it would have gone wild all across the informal settlements and so on. It hasn't really happened. But having said that, at the end of March or beginning of April, we went into curfew. And we put in some more restrictions. So we are we did not go into a heavy lockdown as you have in Europe, but we did some semi lockdown where we have schools closed first. I think schools closed in March. Hotels were now closed. Sorry, restaurants and cafeterias are now all closed, and bars all closed. We have a curfew from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m., so no movement. And then we also created 2 quarantine zones. There's one around Mombasa, around our port town on the coast side. And these are our biggest cities, actually. And then there's Nairobi. And there's an area around it where we've created a quarantine area. So you cannot move in and out unless you're, with a permit. It's very restricted. And you have to, they're allowing food and goods to move in and out. But people, no. Unless it's special circumstances, you have to get permits. It's difficult to move in and out. So that's what they're doing at the moment. And it seems to have worked to some extent. So that actually even most of the cases actually are within those 2 areas, Mombasa and Nairobi. That's where we are getting most of the cases. A few people outside, but mainly in those areas, in those big towns. So that seems to be working. Obviously, working at home is big. A lot of offices closed, especially on the services side. Manufacturing is allowed, and especially on the food side and essential services, those are ongoing. All stores are open. All shops are open. Supermarkets, grocery stores, vegetables, whatever. You can get food easily. So that's going on pretty well. So that's happening. We now also have a rule on masks. So 2-3 weeks ago, we also came up with a rule of masks that you have to wear your mask on in public. And the funny one is they're making us wear the masks in your car. You also have to wear a mask in your car. Of course, in the buses, in public transport, you should wear a mask because you're with other people. But people are wearing masks. You're driving alone in the car. If a policeman catches you, he's like, "Where's your mask?" And they're like, "What's the problem? Who am I infecting?" But anyway, somebody noticed, said, you don't, if you're sleeping alone in your hotel bedroom, do you wear a condom? That was the question. So, it's like,
interesting.
What's the point of this mask?
Right.
But anyway, they are. So we are putting on masks now in public, and that seems to be helping. There's a lot of campaign on hand washing, sanitizing, etc. So that's going on well.
But
so that's Kenya. East Africa.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
So as I'm saying, in East Africa, it's a bit more different. That's what I'm more aware of. Rwanda and Uganda were much stricter on their lockdowns. They closed down shops. They closed down a lot of activity. In Uganda, you're still not allowed to drive. They actually stopped all cars from moving around, but you could only walk. So you could walk to the store. So you can only go to a store near you. You can walk to the store, but you can't, no driving, no public vehicles. But I think they were going to ease. Rwanda is easing up from Monday. Tanzania is our Sweden. They were like, we're not stopping. Okay, we have to move on. We'll tell people, shake their hands and do whatever. And the stories from there now, it seems to be getting worse there. But let me say, no verified sources at the moment from Tanzania about what's happening. And also the problem is that they've clamped down on their media, and they've been doing it for the last 4 or 5 years. So it's very hard to find independent, good sources to tell you what's actually happening. But there is a fear that it's blowing up in Tanzania. So probably the restrictions have had some good effect. Whether they'll be full, I don't know. We'll wait to see. That's East Africa.
So back to Kenya, you're saying that the cases are 420 deaths, and so is the fear high? Like, because here in Italy, there's a huge fear. There's a huge fear to go out and see what's going to happen. They call it the second wave.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fear of the second wave here. Obviously, you didn't have even the first wave, so it's kind of funny to be afraid of the second wave. But what's going on in how people are relating to it? Is that changing people perception or fear? And even economy. I know you didn't close the stores, but there's no restaurants. Yeah. They're not open. Is it affecting? How is it affecting the nation? As usual.
Yeah. So fear is interesting thing, because I think, of course, let's start. It's very individual. So there are very different rates of fear among individuals, and you can tell. A short conversation with somebody, you can see the fearful guys. They are wearing gloves. And I went to the supermarket, and we still have the history of terrorism, so we have security checks for the vehicle before you get into the parking. And this guy, he wouldn't let the security guards open his doors. He came out of the car to open the doors himself because he's afraid they are going to contaminate his car with COVID. So he's got fear at another level, So that's there. But if you take, especially in the low-income areas and say in the general population, people have other needs. Actually, this weekend I saw a cynical comment. Somebody was saying they were going to test general testing in the informal area. So, this thing, controlling it is always about testing, because you start getting to know where we are and how many people actually have it. So they were like, let's just go pick people at random, and we'll get a sense of what it's like in the population, so in the public area. So somebody was saying, but are they going to test us for hunger as well? Yeah. Will the test tell you that I'm hungry or not? Because they have economic issues, and I think it's a health issue, but it is so linked with the economy, with sociology, with how people live. You can't try and deal with it as one crisis. It's a whole meta crisis thing. So let's say the upper classes, the richer people who are like you and me, they have a house, they can sit at home and work and do things. They seem to be more fearful for some reason. I suppose because they live in the illusion that they control more of their lives.
And they have more to lose.
They do. They have. Yeah, they have more to lose. Yeah. Well, it's an illusion because they know if I'm in their mind is that if I'm sick, I have medical insurance. I have money to take my kids to school. I know what I'm going to do for holidays. I've got a retirement plan. So in a sense, their life is kind of much more structured, organized. And the whole pandemic crisis and so on, the COVID thing just disrupts that a little bit more. But if you live in informal circumstances and you don't know what you're going to earn tomorrow or next week, maybe you have a contract for a week or a month, you get to learn to live with that uncertainty. So another uncertainty is, I think there is some level of fear and concern, but it's not life-changing. You haven't shaken the foundations of where they live. So in those informal, and I think the main reason in Kenya we did not go for a full lockdown is because of understanding the economies that happen there. There's a lot of trading economy, a lot of casual work, like I hope it doesn't interfere, but I have there's a construction site at my neighbor's place. My neighbor's got a construction site and they're going full blast. And these guys, they're paid every week. So every Saturday they will be paid. So it's important for them to keep working because otherwise they don't have any money. So that's happening. A lot of tourism has been decimated, and we have a lot of parks, hotels and so on, and it's just down to zero. So there are no flights coming in, and so that is going to be a big hit in our market. The other one, and actually it's a lot of the, say, visible industries for foreign exchange, has been export agriculture. So we do, and we have two sides of it. We have floriculture, we have flowers, which somehow, and we sell a lot of, we are the biggest suppliers of flowers to Europe, through the Holland market and so on, external suppliers, that is, from Kenya. And that's gone down significantly. I think it went down 80% at some point. It's kind of recovering a bit, maybe 30, 40%, but it's not as big as it was before. So that's gone down. And then we also have horticulture, which is now vegetables, which again is the vegetables we send to Europe, mostly to Europe, whether it's peas, different types of beans and so on. And that again had really shut down. It had really gone down when we had the first lockdowns, but there are now systems coming up and they're able to export them. But the flower people, for instance, I got a call this week and there was a lady asked me, do you guys use flowers for anything in pharma? And because now they're throwing away flowers because they grew them over 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, and so on. But we sent a couple to UK. UK is one of our big flower markets. We sent a few free samples, just to give the doctors there, because hopefully they'll remember us after the whole crisis is gone. So I think yesterday the president was saying we've got about 500,000 jobs at risk if this continues. I think the number is higher than that. Because of course there are formal and informal jobs. But the reality is, and there was an economist writing about this recently here in Kenya, is that the people in formal jobs are more at risk because when they lose their work, they're lost. They only know how to go into an office, open a laptop and do some work or something like that. But the informal job guys, they know that, today I'm working in a construction site, tomorrow I'll help a guy push his car or his goods somewhere, or I'll buy something and trade. So they are already absolutely flexible. Yeah. And they know how to go through the ups and downs. So they've got some resilience there. So maybe they will not survive. The only problem they will have is that although it's the informal economy, they are largely driven by the formal one because that's where a lot of the money comes from. So I'm formally employed. I decide to do an addition. Say we've been doing some construction next to my house, some additional stuff. So somebody in the informal sector gets a job. Now, if I get unemployed, I don't do that job. He doesn't get.
Right.
He doesn't get a job. Yeah. So it kind of trickles down. Yeah.
No. I like to summarize this, and the most powerful thing I hear from you is that really interesting though is that people that used to think that that they had everything under control, they are the most fearful. The people that have always lived in a insecure environment, they are actually as before, as usual. They run their life as usual. Which means not knowing what tomorrow is going to happen, and they are not too scared as much as the people that have a solidity. They think they have control, as you said. That's a beautiful way to put it. Because we think we have control, but we don't have control as we think we have it. Yeah. So I like to keep it at that, and probably I will call you again, down the line just to see about the economy, because see, I think that's going to be the biggest repercussion. The economical one is going to be quite big, and we cannot see it right now. We will see it after the lockdown, after a couple of months, after things will kind of come back to normal, or whatever normal means, and we will see how much we will have to pay for this phase. But
for these things,
yeah.
And I think also the other thing about it is that this is still, to some extent, and there are all these tables showing how different countries are doing. This is still, if you listen to some of the epidemiologists, the people who understand disease and so on, this is still early days.
Yeah.
So this is going to roll out over a period. So even if at the moment in Kenya we are lucky, and it's very interesting actually how different countries are getting hit at different rates. There are some explanations, but I'm not sure they're the full thing. So if you take New York and say Los Angeles or whatever, you think why is New York so much worse, or in Italy, why is Lombardy so much worse than Florence? Say what's the we don't quite understand what these things are, but I think it's going to roll out over time, and we will come to understand it, and that again is the resilience issue, because then the question is about resilience. What are we able to be adaptive in the time? And we're making decisions now, but nobody knows if these are the right decisions or not.
Right.
We will find out over a long time whether we've made the right decisions globally or locally or not. But yet, you can already see some of the consequences. Whatever the decisions, or whether they were right or wrong, the consequences are going to be there even as we keep adjusting to one way or another. One of the interesting things, I just say, as people react, is also seeing the different kind of personalities, because personalities now start to
arise.
To come out, to arise out, and not just, and then also you see the cycle they go through. I mean, also myself, there are the days of shock, there's the days of despair, and then there's the other one of like, let's go out and do something. And then you can see some other people in denial. They're like, no, we're going to get through this, and we're going to plan things and so on. The other day, actually, a guy called me, and he wants to do a real estate project, and it's he was saying, okay, maybe we should get together, do a real estate project. And I'm just thinking, where do you live? do you realize the impact on the economy? You want to do a big real estate project now. I guess maybe he has cash. I guess he has cash somewhere. He wants to spend it. But I'm like, real estate is going to be decimated at the moment. And you're thinking about investing in that. So I wondered whether he's just trying to go back, just to say, people just say, I'm just going to live my life as usual and hope everything turns out. So they're the ones who are very hopeful. And then they're the pessimists as well. They're the very pessimistic who are like, this is the end of the world, and we may never get out of this. And I think the truth is somewhere in between.
Right.
Well, we
Yeah,
will be.
and the way I like to go about it, because I've started since the beginning of my lockdown to get some interviews and track the situation from a different standpoint, and I love to track
Yes.
it, because I love to see what
Yeah.
really happens and what we were thinking, at the beginning, what was going to happen.
Yes.
I think this is going to become a library that I will look at in a year or two and say, this is what we were thinking, and this is what was actually happening, and
This is what
it's
happened.
very interesting
Yeah.
about perception, and about how we relate to things we cannot control or we don't know,
Yeah.
and I think to me, it's a beautiful study also, and I love to do it, and I
Yes.
love to get people involved like you, because you have a hands-on understanding, as an entrepreneur, as a person that works with the government and with the people, and a lot of employees, and I think, that really gives me the pulse of the situation in the moment.
What's going on?
Then we'll see.
Yes.
Then we'll see, and I love to keep our conversation going and see what happens.
Yeah.
But thank you very much, Mucai. I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate being able to talk to you. I hope I see you soon when they open up the airports. But
yes.
For now, keep safe and keep strong, man.
Yeah, exactly. All right. See you then. Cheers.